Episode 56K. Danish and Australian research highlights that home wood burning also produces methane. This is a powerful global heating gas, and further skews the balance away from climate neutrality. Wood burning produces CO2, which adds to blackening of Arctic snow and increases melt rates. 3. Comparisons between the climate impacts of wood heating and alternatives are even worse if we compare it with heat pumps run by wind or other carbon-neutral energy. 4. Studies on supply chains are urgently needed to fully understand the impacts of home wood heating on our climate, woodlands, and biodiversity. 5. However, it is clear that the best way to reduce the climate impacts of home heating is to leave trees growing in the forest and invest in insulation and true low or zero carbon energy. Opinion in 2021 that wood burning is not carbon neutral. ROSEP view. In this article, the Dogwood Alliance, a community group protesting the pollution from the Enviva industrial wood burning plant in North Carolina, has much of the same priorities as residents against wood smoke emission particulates, except that ROSEP is focused on hyperlocalized pollution in the yards of near neighbors of residential wood burners. The Venn diagram overlap between both groups in terms of the priority of protecting human health would be close to 100%. Biomass is promoted as a carbon-neutral fuel. But is burning wood a step in the wrong direction? Many scientists and environmental campaigners question the industry's claims to offer a clean, renewable energy source that the planet desperately needs. Tuesday, October 5, 2021. Excerpts edited by ROSEP for brevity and clarity on the subject that wood burning is not carbon neutral. Thick dust has been filling the air and settling on homes in Deborah David's neighborhood of Hamlet, North Carolina, ever since a wood pellet plant started operating nearby in 2019. The 64-year-old said the pollution is badly affecting the health of the population. The older people have it the worst, she added. They stay inside most of the time, and when they do come out they struggle to breathe. They can't sit out in their yards like they used to. Deborah David lives near an Enviva wood pellet plant in Hamlet, North Carolina. Photograph, Dogwood Alliance. The plant, owned by Maryland-headquartered Enviva, the world's largest biomass producer, is one of 4 the company operates in North Carolina, turning trees into wood pellets, most of which are exported to the UK, Europe, and Japan to burn for energy. Biomass has been promoted as a carbon-neutral energy source by industry, some countries, and lawmakers on the basis that the emissions released by burning wood can be offset by the carbon dioxide taken up by trees grown to replace those burned. Yet there remain serious doubts among many scientists about its carbon-neutral credentials, especially when wood pellets are made by cutting down whole trees, rather than using waste wood products. It can take as much as a century for trees to grow enough to offset the carbon released. Burning wood for energy is also inefficient. Biomass has been found to release more carbon dioxide per unit of energy than coal or gas, according to a 2018 study and an open letter to the EU signed by nearly 800 scientists. This CO2 is theoretically reabsorbed by new trees, but some scientists suggest relying on biomass could actually end up increasing emissions just at the time when the world needs to sharply reduce emissions and reach goals of becoming net zero by 2050. Over the last decade, a wave of biomass plants across the U.S. South have access to the region's vast hardwood and other wetland forests on unprotected private lands. The biomass industry continues to grow, supported by subsidies especially from the UK as well as the EU, which declared biomass a carbon-neutral energy source in 2009 and is relying on it to help the bloc replace fossil fuel energy and meet climate goals. At least 22 plants in the southeast are now exporting pellets to Europe, according to the Southern Environmental Law Center, SELC. This number is increasing, with permits filed or issued for 12 more plants, according to the SELC. We feel trapped. Nearly 200 miles from Hamlet, Belinda Joyner, a retired resident of Garysburg, North Carolina, has been campaigning against the nearby Northampton County Enviva plant since it began operations in 2013. The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change said biomass can mitigate emissions, provided resources are developed sustainably and especially when wood residues and waste are used. In Garysburg, Joyner is calling on global policymakers and industry bosses to acknowledge the problems with biomass. She said the voices of those who live near wood pellet plants are still going unheard as the biomass industry continues to grow. Profit over people, that's how I see it, Joyner said. As long as they're making that money, they don't care how people feel and they don't care what's going on in your community. Opinion in 2020 that wood burning is not carbon neutral. Rosep View, the rider that wood burning is carbon neutral added in 2020 in the U.S. Senate to the stimulus bill was the elephant in the room that not enough people talked about. This 2020 article said the rider only was intended to last until September 2021. Whether it was removed or not affects whether residents against wood smoke emission particulates accepts the stimulus bill conditions will be effective in helping stop residential wood burning eventually. The 2020 article concludes, now some in Congress are pushing the U.S. to go down the wood burning path. The good news is that the rider, attached to the spending bill, only lasts through September 2021, when the budget expires. President-elect Joe Biden ran on a strong climate platform, including preserving forests. He and his new environmental team should take care not to allow the U.S. to fall into this trap. Did Biden fall into this trap and extend the rider declaring wood burning carbon neutral? Op-ed, is burning wood for power carbon neutral? Not a chance. Wood stacked among remains of the forest in Gdansk, Poland. December 28, 2020, 3:15 a.m. Pacific Time. Excerpt edited by Rosep for brevity and clarity on the subject. Wood burning is not carbon neutral. The mammoth pandemic stimulus and spending bill Congress passed last week includes billions of dollars to expand solar and wind energy. These are good measures to address greenhouse gas emissions. But the bill also contains a rider that would undercut those efforts. A provision added to the bill, pushed for by Senator Susan Collins, Republican Maine, declares that cutting down trees and burning them for energy is carbon neutral. This, of course, makes no sense. Burning wood will add to global warming, even if the wood replaces coal or natural gas, as scientific organizations and hundreds of scientists have long argued. In recent years, there has been a bizarre but dangerous push to retrofit power plants and factories to burn wood. The European Union has spurred this effort by adopting laws allowing wood to count as a carbon-free, renewable fuel. Countries in the EU responded by subsidizing power plants to burn wood. Utilities lobbied for this shift after realizing that their coal-fired power plants could stay in business if modified at public expense to mix in some use of wood. But the process of burning wood results in more carbon being released into the atmosphere than burning coal. Overall, using wood produces 2 to 3 times as much carbon per kilowatt-hour as burning coal or natural gas. Utilities using wood to meet clean energy requirements displaces the use of truly clean energy sources such as solar or wind. The origins of this bizarre way of thinking about burning wood for power generation lies in a misinterpretation of scientific guidance about how to count emissions. Since the early 1990s, countries have reported their emissions each year to the United Nations as part of a global treaty, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. Because it is easier to count the carbon to be released from trees as soon as they are cut, a global scientific panel told countries to report the carbon at that stage. To avoid double counting, countries then do not count the carbon released into the atmosphere when the wood is burned. This national reporting system works because the emissions are counted somewhere. Lawmakers have misread this rule as a declaration that carbon from burning wood can be ignored entirely in national and local laws for power plants and factories, as has been the case with Europe's renewable energy laws and emissions trading system.